Hey, what's up everybody? I'll be Tarafdar back with a brand new video. Today I want to talk about something very important, and that's the concept of late payments and how to strategize around working with creditors who are refusing to adjust those late payments. And one of the biggest things that I've seen in the channel is the questions about how do we adjust late payments. I've been trying to deal with creditors when it comes to Goodwill letters, and I've been trying to ask them to go ahead and give me a Goodwill adjustment. The unfortunate thing here is that not always will you be able to create a working relationship with creditors when it comes to late payments, because they themselves are not necessarily confident about your request in terms of asking for a Goodwill, and that is because the track record that you have with your creditors prior doesn't necessarily demonstrate your confidence in what you're saying. Basically, the creditors cannot trust or take your word for it that you're going not to be late again, or you're basically trying to work with them in reference to minimizing, the fact that you were late. The biggest thing there, and the takeaway I can give you guys when it comes to fixing your late payments, or when it comes to dealing with your creditors, is assume that you can fix your creditors. Assume that you can work with them, only given a certain set of conditions. One of those conditions is that you'll need to comfortably adjust your schedule around explaining to them that you've been with them for a long time. The Goodwill has to have some sort of merit. A lot of people approach Goodwill as though it's just something that you can do, and the fact of the matter is you can't necessarily just approach the creditors and ask them for Goodwill if there's no real track record behind it. You have to show that, in the past 24 months, 36 months, or whatever the case, you've done your best, and you've been on time, and you've demonstrated a financial performance that the creditor feels pleased with in reference to the amount of balances you've been carrying, in reference to the aggressive payments that you've been making. Or have you been just maintaining minimums, and you've been late a few times and you're asking for a Goodwill? That doesn't really bode too well. So you have to ask yourself, what is the right way to go ahead and deal with it? You have to ask yourself, what's the best situation when it comes to getting the appropriate Goodwill adjustments in your scenario? So to me, I feel that a lot of people ask for Goodwill adjustments without really any specific merits. So the best thing to do is analyze your account history with that creditor prior to even giving him a phone call. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people call their creditors directly, and what ends up happening is, as they call these creditors, they don't necessarily have a very strong track record with those creditors. They're not really sure of what to say or how to say it, and what ends up happening is they actually make a lot of mistakes in the process, and that's actually a very big issue. So if you really want to make a successful Goodwill adjustment, and if you want it to work in your favor, you have to make sure that you attempt to study your account history, because that's the only tool that'll basically help you the most possible, because that tool itself will give you a definitive idea of bringing back some sort of historical context in your conversation when you're attempting to get a Goodwill adjustment. The other thing that we want to really observe and really understand when it comes to late payments is the prediction with the creditor's algorithms, whether or not it is likely that you're going to be late again, or is it just that it's a one-time incident. There's new things that we have to consider, like the pandemic. A lot of creditors are being very lenient with their customers, and they're making those adjustments on a Goodwill basis. But how consistently will they continue to do that? We don't know that yet. How consistently will they respect those Goodwill adjustments? We don't know that yet. What we know for a fact is that you have to do your very best when it comes to working with creditors with account historical data that depicts your attitude towards that credit account. It shows that you've been very aggressive with minimum payments. It shows that you've been working with them for a long time, that you're paying more than your balances due. It shows that you're actually strategically using that account in a very structured way. For example, if you have a point system in your credit account, are you using it and basically using those tools and being with a constant communication with that creditor to define a well-balanced working relationship with that creditor? So Goodwill adjustments have to be approached in context to account historical data. A lot of people will tell you otherwise, and they'll send you templates that you can send to your creditors and hopefully use that template to get the Goodwill adjustment. But my 2 cents on that is that it's not always going to be the case. You're not always going to be successful with that, because you're going to have issues with creditors when it comes to that, right? If you don't have specific account history, you have nothing as a talking point with them, and they won't feel compelled to work with you. So that's the first thing I really want you to pay attention to, because you are making that mistake if you're going to do it without any historical context to your account, without really analyzing your account, without really understanding deep down what matters most when it comes to these creditors. And that's what those type of things you need to focus on to get the best type of outcome. So that's one point, right? And now we move on to the second point, which I think when it comes to late payments, you really have to hone in on and adjust when it comes to understanding the logistical scenario here. And a good example of this is sometimes the creditors put a late payment, but we forget that we were a couple of days late and not necessarily 30. But you see, the problem with that is the credit reporting agencies don't necessarily have a code that enables you to put individual days late. Rather, they have 30-day intervals. So sometimes, even though you were 5 to 10 days late, the creditor reports that as 30 days late, and therefore that is actually quite inaccurate, and it's not necessarily giving the information to potential creditors who are looking at your profile, specifically your credit, the accurate data that is required for underwriting decision. But more importantly, it is actually kind of, in a sense, defamation, because it is saying stuff about you that isn't necessarily accurate or true. And that's one thing that you absolutely need to understand when it comes to late payments. So what you got to do in those instances, and the way you go ahead and solve that issue, is you got to tell your creditor, or at least write to your creditor, that look, it says on the credit reporting agency there's a mistake, it says 30, and I'm pretty confident I was in 30 days late. Can you go ahead and make sure and make that adjustment for me, please, based on the calendar days? Usually what you're doing is you're not necessarily disputing it, but you're telling them that the information reported is inaccurately reporting. Sometimes that works quite well, right? And also at the same time, if you have a conversation with the credit reporting agencies and you communicate with them via writing and or phone conversation, and you explain to them that you will never 30 days late, that's completely inaccurate. You've attempted to communicate with the creditor and they haven't responded yet, so can you please look into that? The credit bureaus will go ahead and obviously conduct their own independent investigation if it's done properly and if it's approached the right way. So those are the two methods that you can actually use. So just to go ahead and give you guys more context in reference to the first and the second, when you're executing these type of strategies, I want you guys to really sit down and analyze your current situation. Whether the type of tools and resources you have in front of you, the data that you're working with, the analytical tools that you have in terms of referencing to understanding your accounts, whether or not they're actually playing a pivotal role in helping your situation to go ahead and negotiate that late payment off your credit report. If it's not, then what you'll need to do is you'll have to reference the way the credit report is showing that item. Was it showing it in a very accurate perspective? Is it compliant to the rules and regulations of the Fair Credit Reporting Act? Is it compliant to the rules and regulation of data accuracy? That is one thing that I think a lot of people miss out on, is understanding those golden rules. It doesn't necessarily mean that Goodwill is the end-all be-all solution, that if it doesn't work, then we cannot fix it. The fact of the matter is there's probably hundreds of other ways that you can approach this, but the most common ones is the ones that I've listed to you. So the Goodwill is definitely the way to go if you have, like I said, strong historical context and data and transactional history with that creditor. The second method is obviously to go ahead and explain to the creditors and the credit reporting agencies that typically you're never 30 days late because the timelines don't add up. So go ahead and investigate that. So, and then the third and final point here is a bonus that I want to go ahead and share with you guys, because I think this will actually go ahead and give you a bit more perspective as to making adjustments for lates, whether in the past or the future, is that whenever you are late, there's an adverse action that's created in your credit report. An adverse action is basically a negative item being reported to your credit. Whenever such a thing is happening, a creditor has the duty under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to go ahead and notify you. Now, we talked about timelines and when do they have to notify you and so on and so forth. That doesn't necessarily matter, usually within a 30-day time frame, but they have the fiduciary duty to go ahead and notify you that they're taking an adverse action. An adverse action is basically something that will hurt your ability to borrow, something that is negative or potentially delinquent that's going to be added to your credit reporting agency. So the creditors have to go ahead and notify you about that. And if they fail to do so, then definitely that is a violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and the right to report is also nullified, and therefore you can challenge it that way as well. So think about those three strategies very deeply. It will help you understand how to go ahead and challenge those late payments effectively rather than just guessing. And hopefully you will get the outcomes that you're looking for. Again, if you're having challenges and you still are not sure of which step to follow, given your unique circumstances, go ahead and schedule a call with me. It's absolutely free. It's for 15 minutes. We'll try to address the issue together. It's actually, the link is in the description on the Calendly, so you can schedule a time to speak with me. If you have any specific questions in reference to this very video that we shared about late payments and alternative strategies to fixing it, I'm going to encourage you guys to go ahead and write to me below and leave a comment below this video so that we can have a conversation. If you like this video, smash this like button so the YouTube algorithm can help me push out this content to other people who enjoy watching these type of content and learning about personal credit. Don't forget to subscribe, turn the notifications on to all so you don't miss a single video when I release them. And don't forget to share this video with those who are going through a situation where they're late, and potentially not necessarily because of late, but rather those circumstances we just described. So it will definitely help them out. So with that said, this is definitely your guide and mentor, Ali Tarafdar. Catch you guys on the next one. Bye for now.